So hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to take a look quickly at the Ottoman that I had picked up a while back. And as you can see, completely devoid of all the fabric and staples that were on it. It's just stripped bare. I want to take a moment to recap if you guys haven't seen the other videos. Basically, I picked this up out of the dumpster with the intention of just putting on new fabric after this was washed, you know, to make sure it didn't have any germs and all that on it. But when I started to take off that fabric that I had, I found out that this was already a shoddily done repurpose of the Ottoman to begin with, and the original fabric was still attached, and there was a ton of roach crap stuck to the insides and the crevices of it. So I had to do a bit more work than I originally had planned. Well, now you can see all that work has come to a bit of fruition. We're completely stripped of our stripped to our bare necessities, which is the frame. In case you remember from my last video, I said I'd be putting a piece of wood across the bottom to help stabilize the Ottoman itself, because you can tell it's a little wobbly, and it adds some extra room for extra support for the foam that hopefully I'll be reusing. And the reason I say hopefully is because I'm not entirely sure how this is all going to work just yet. From the looks of it, this alone won't be any good unless I've got something underneath to help keep it stiff, which is probably what all the rest of this was intended for. But we won't know for a while. But today I'm just going to start by showing you guys how to sand. So first we're just going to work on getting these legs off. And you can tell without the fabric in place, it's a bit easy to wiggle them off. But at the same time, you still got to work at it. And you kind of have to go from two directions at once. And that's one. That's two. So we've got one leg taken out. We've got one side taken out. And if you guys don't remember, I said I'd only sand the legs because of the fact that you're not really going to see the rest of the wood from the fabric. The only issue I have, though, is that some of these legs will not leave their the piece of wood that goes to one side of them because of some form of staple or fastener that they put into it from the original work, which is alright. It just makes my job a little harder because I'm trying to focus more on the ornate side down here than on anything else. Come on. And presto. But you get the idea. Take one leg off. Repeat process. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take care of the rest of these in. As you've no doubt heard from any of my previous videos, or if you're completely new, my setup for my videos is not completely streamlined. I still have to do a lot of working and maneuvering, particularly like this, in order to change my videos around, and I can't particularly edit like I used to, as the software I had to do the editing is no longer valid because apparently it was a free trial and da-da-da-da-da. Anyway, you will catch me in about 2 seconds on this video, so I will see you guys in just a second. So we're back, and as you can see, I've got one of the feet of the Ottoman with me, and as I was saying earlier, very ornate, but the paint is coming off. It's coming off very chippy, and it's not all that great anymore because it's so old. And I would sit down and I'd show you how to do the whole thing, sand it all down, but I'm just going to show you one leg because that's all you're going to need to know, because it's repeating the same process, and it just seems kind of useless to have people sit there and watch you sand down 4 legs. But what we're going to do is I have 200 grit sandpaper. You know, you can get 400 or 350 if you want something finer. But the reason I got something like 200 is because, in my opinion, it's just gritty enough to get really get into the paint, and it won't take you as long as, say, using a 400, which will take forever, even though this is a very ornate piece and I want to keep most of the detailing. If you want, and I do not recommend because I think it'll probably ruin your wood, but if you want, I've been told you can take these out with you can take these outside and using a pressure washer that has a 0 setting on it, just blast this from a distance, obviously, because you don't want to be right up in there, otherwise you're going to drill a hole right through your wood. But, you know, get a powerful enough pressure washer, put it on the 0 setting or whatever the lowest setting is, and at the recommended distance for, you know, whatever distance starts chipping away the paint without too much damage to the wood, that's where you're going to want to be, and that's what you're going to use. I prefer just sanding it down. I would put this to a rotary sander or to a belt sander, but again, it's an ornate piece. You don't want ornate being, you know, rubbed vigorously by high grit or low grit. I don't know how the grit system works. My guess is the higher the number, the finer the grain. But you don't want something ornate being rubbed vigorously against a rotary sander or a belt sander, because usually the grit that you have there is very high, and it'll only get the raised edges. It won't get up in the crevices as much as physically taking the paper is. So we're just going to sit here and we're going to start sanding this down. Like I said, not exactly the best camera setup here, but it's about all I got to work with. So I do have good news though, and that is that the workbench that I mentioned in a previous video, and if not, I'm mentioning it now, I have a rather large workbench that I acquired. It's almost ready to be used. I just need to find a place to facilitate it. But in order to get a place to facilitate it, I have to do a lot of rearranging in some other areas. What I think I'm going to start with is the foot, the actual foot, instead of, you know, like the leg or the thigh or whatever, because this has the most, the least amount of paint on the area. So it'll be a rather easy way to start into it. Now you can cut the sandpaper into sheets, but I prefer to keep the whole thing attached as much as possible so you don't lose it. But against my better judgment, it looks like I actually have to cut this. So I'm going to have to look for my scissors or whatever I can find to cut this. There. Yeah, you know, a nice pair of kitchen shears or heavy-duty shears should usually work. But I'm just going to go ahead and get it into strips. You could also say that folding your sandpaper works, but I've tried folding sandpaper before. It ruins your hands rather easily because now you're rubbing both the wood and flesh against a gritty surface, and that's never good. But and it also, the creases that you make are perfectly usable spots for sandpaper, and believe it or not, every inch or every centimeter of sandpaper you can find and use is usually going to be needed. You know, even if it's not, you know, during the current project, it's still going to be needed on one project or another. And I've gone ahead and I just cut it into small strips so I don't have to worry about, you know, something being too big or too small. The only problem that I'll probably see with this is that I'll run through the sandpaper really quickly. But that shouldn't be too much of an issue. Let me just move my shears out of the way so I can set this down. And if any of you have been keeping up with my activity on, you know, as far as liking videos, looking at videos and such like that, you'll see I've recently taken up more of a blacksmithing or metalworking interest, and I'm not sure if I've mentioned that in another video or not, but give me a minute, I'm just putting on a mask here. I tend to forget that when it comes to sanding, the wood particles and dust, the sawdust, will get everywhere and including inside of your lungs, and if I recall, that's not particularly a good thing. But the interest in the metalworking has actually been a long time wonder of mine, and I now actually have the resources to begin such, and I will try to include videos for that in the into the channel as well. And as you've probably no doubt figured out, I'm just filling up my channel with videos on just about anything I've got time to record, because I think somewhere, some way, somebody's gonna find a use for it. You know, whether it be in the gaming videos that I do with you guys, or it's inside the dumpster finds, or what have you. Somebody will eventually find some use for what I put up, and that's the whole point of this, just finding a use for my videos for somebody. You know, I'm trying to help everyone in one way or another. Can't really blow on it when you got a mask on. I keep forgetting that. But yeah, like I thought, these strips are just gonna run out of sand, or grit, or whatever. And I'm not particularly a handyman as much as I'd like to be, which is both a good and a bad thing, because it'll actually help show my growth, or our growth, for anybody who is similar in manner of we don't know what the hell is going on. I'm trying to get you guys into this as much as possible, but it's particularly a pain when your camera is the way it is. But as you can see, it's coming along nicely, but that's mainly because a lot of the work was done for me, you know, by just regular wear and tear. And now that I look back at the other legs, it seems like this one was the most battered and bruised for some reason. And I'm gonna try, you know, curve like a corkscrew, and just try doing this. And you could argue this works and it doesn't, but I don't know. I'm just trying it, just how to try and move this along a little. And it seems that it does indeed do a little bit of work. Probably be better for a larger piece of sandpaper, of which this is about used up. So let's try switching this slightly bigger sheet. This is really getting stained from that paint or I can never tell if this is staining or paint or whatever, but whatever it is, it covered the original wood and is staining my sandpaper, so I'm just going to think it was a dye or a stain. But you guys can, get the gist. Just sand. I prefer starting at the foot, moving up to the leg, and then the ornate bit, which I'm going to do with you guys shortly. So I'll see you again in a little bit when all this has been taken care of and we're ready to go into the ornate piece. So, just give me a second here. Greetings, everyone. Or, no, not greetings. I don't know what to say. But anyway, continuation of where I told you I was going to pick up. We're about ready to start getting into here. On the more detailed parts, as you can see, I've pretty much filed all of the old stuff out. What's left is the understain down here. And the understain, I don't really think will interfere a lot with the new stain. I think it's just, like food dye, basically. Food dye's dripped all over that you can worry about later. So we're going to go and we're going to start working on this. And at the time you guys are watching it, it seems to, fly by. Or, almost instantaneous, except for the obvious cut, go. But you guys are watching this for about 16 minutes. This took me about 4 hours to sand. So what I'm going to show you guys is your detailing, which is going to be used with the Dremel. You can get different size Dremels, but I prefer the cordless battery charged ones, even though this one's a bit funky looking in terms of how you handle it and such. You can still use it for a lot of your detail work, and it does get a good job done for most things I've ever used it on. I don't particularly have a good sander on hand for this particular type of sanding, for the detail. So I'm going to use a little wire brush, which I experimented on when I was working on other projects, and it seemed to work pretty well. My only issue is I don't know if this battery is charged or not. I haven't used this in a while, so you're about to find out with me. At this point, I'd like to point out that even though this seems to be working, you're going to want to put on some eye gear, because it does seem to fling some of the particles towards your eyes. Also, I forgot my mask. Remember, do not forget your mask when you're sanding. The dust will get all over your will get all over your face and in your lungs, and it's just not something pretty to have to deal with when you're coughing up, wood in the emergency room 20 years from now or some shit like that. Yep, that's what I thought. No, the Dremel that I've got apparently is not charged, as you just saw. So we're going to come back in a little bit when the Dremel is charged, and we'll continue on with our sanding. Okay guys, so we now have our fully charged Dremel, and we're going to see if we can pick up where we left off. Quick little thing I want to mention, I have this on the highest possible setting because anything below the 10 setting on this tends to take a bit longer, and it doesn't always cut through the through the lacquer and the paint that it should. So we're going to go ahead and we're just going to continue on with this. Now I just want to take a minute to stop and show you guys, compared to the rest of the color that we have, you can tell this has definitely been a bit more sanded. And while we keep going on that, I'm going to again put on my mask because I have the bad habit of just taking it off, leaving it off, and then inhaling a bunch of dust and dirt particles. Anyway, you can definitely tell where we started, which is down here, and the wire brush is taking off the lacquer and the paint without doing too much damage to the rest of the wood, which is what we want. Only problem is that I later have to go back in with that, with a smaller bit or sandpaper, and just get through that. And as I move on along through, I'm starting to look, and I see that a lot of this detailing, a lot of the ornateness of the leg has actually been taken out by blasting or being old. It's just it's fraying over here. So we're gonna have to try and think of a way to fix that, but that'll be later. So we're just gonna continue on with our I also want to state that when using a wire brush tip, do not press hard on the tip, as it will cause the wires to bend and be less effective. Just be as light as possible with your wire brush tip. And again, I'm only using the wire brush tip because I don't have a decent sanding tip, and this is what I saw that was the next best thing. Do not do what I'm doing, which is running your finger along the bottom like that, because it'll also help bend it. You want to try and keep your bristles as straight as possible. I'm actually turning off right now because I can feel it getting hot, and if you overheat your Dremel, it's more than likely, I've never had an issue with my Dremel overheating, but if you let it run for too long while it's hot, it's probably going to short out and fuse some of the pieces together, or just shorten the life of this overall. But you can tell we are getting some progress done. We've got the brown here as opposed to the really dark brown all the way up in here. And I want to inform that, or not inform, but state that I am probably not going to be using regular sandpaper up on this particular ornate set of legs, because the sandpaper, number one, is going to just straight out level the ornate raises in the wood. So I'm gonna be using a Dremel bit for obvious reasons. On top of that, probably gonna have to improvise on bits, because the ones I'm using, as far as sanding goes, doesn't really work as well as I would hope it would. This is about as this is about the most sandy piece I have, and so far it's kind of let me down. It hasn't really sanded a whole lot into the wood, and it's probably because it's not really meant for sanding, and I'll understand if you say that in the comments, but I can only work with what I've got, you know. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna resume this. How about that? Yeah. I think the battery on this is sort of shot for the time being, because it got overheated rather quickly, or I may have just undercharged it. So we'll meet back again when we have this thing charged, or if I decide to use something else. Well, as you guys can see, I've got most of the sanding done on the ornate side. I'm gonna try and figure out another way to get through a lot of the curves and so on, to really get in there and make sure that we have everything. So for now, I'm gonna bid you all adieu. Subscribe if you haven't already. Please comment below and stay tuned, because I'm sure there will always be more for me to give you guys. Be safe, and I'll see you next time, little hatchlings.